Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and as always, and actually not just by my good friend, my business partner, the dear Jason Johnston Yellen, but also by my friends, the tree workers, the arborists. One would think it's Arbor Day with I don't know if you could hear it, Jason, but I've got saws happening. There's tree limbs dropping. Can you hear that?
I cannot.
You can't. Oh my gosh.
Tree limbs are dropping. Is that from a Christmas song?
Tree limbs are dropping. 5 golden.
I think it's 5 Philippe Panavongs.
Philippe Panavong. It's funny.
This is in our minds because Elijah was at the whiskey shop. I don't know if it happened at the whiskey shop or a tasting afterwards. Might even have been a tasting afterwards, I think he said. But he actually met the good Philippe Panavong.
Yeah.
And I think Philippe said, you may know me from such things as Jason and Joshua singing my name to the tune of Feliz Navidad. So, you know.
I hope that he did it in his best Troy McClure voice. Hi, I'm Philippe Panavong. You may know me from such things as Philippe Panavong. Philippe Panavong. You know, it's funny. We're singing this Philippe Panavong song. Oh, it's like the thong song. No, we're singing this Panavong song, which makes me think of winter and December and holidays. Mm-hmm. But anytime I hear chainsaws, I think of the springtime. It sounds like spring cleaning for me, and I have this artificial spring fever going on right now. Like I'm really starting to, and it's not even February, Jason.
No, you're in a lot of trouble there. I thought you were going to say whenever you hear chainsaws, it makes you think of Texas. And I think given the power of post, you can edit out the 1 second it took for that penny to drop.
No, I want people to know how slow I am this morning. And most mornings, if we're being honest.
So here's I've got two things on the brain. And number one we'll circle back to, obviously. But just as we're sitting here talking about December and all things cold, I am thinking about, we interviewed today's subjects, Mark and David, in December. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to be in the warm comforts of December, chatting away with them, dramming away with them. And so I'm very excited to return to them in today's episode. But I had a chance to reflect over my weekend. And I thought as I was reflecting, I'm going to have to reflect with Joshua and our listeners when we record the next episode of One Nation Under Whiskey.
Our listeners, both my listeners and yours?
I've combined them, yes. Oh, right. Yes, this is the power of Grayskull. So, so here's what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. I remember being a boy in Scotland. And I remember my dad and my uncles and even one of my aunts getting together. And they would get together somewhat regularly, and either they would all be at our house or we'd be at their house, and drinking would occur. Mm-hmm. And they'd be drinking blends that would be diluted. And I've talked about this before. This isn't the point of my reflection. Yeah. But, they would either use faucet water or ginger ale or Scottish lemonade, which looks a lot more like a Sprite or a 7-Up. And then they would have a can of beer. And at the age that I was, me and my cousins, we'd be responsible for going to the fridge and getting the cans and going over and pouring the blends and getting the 2 fingers and adding whatever the mixer was going to be. And so we'd be the little gophers in all of this. And so it was always obvious to us just how much we were making and pouring and delivering, right? And so like we would have gatherings where my dad would have a good half dozen beers and half dozen whiskeys, right? And sometimes that number would be 8, and sometimes that number would be 10, right? And it was just like, it wouldn't be a surprise at the end of an evening to see a little pile of cans around a chair where somebody had not moved from for 6 hours.
Okay.
Right? There would be a little collection of empty cans, and then you knew they'd used the same tumbler for their blends, right, in their mixer. And I was thinking the other night, I don't drink like my dad ever drank. Mm-hmm. And I sent you a photo of a beer that I was drinking, which was a Basic City Mexican Mole Stout.
It looked awesome.
9% alcohol. Okay. Right? And then after that, I had a couple of Cask strength drams. I had a couple of my favorite Kilhomans, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've got this 9% beer and these 2 Cask strength pours of Kilhoman.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's when my reflection began.
You're like, I'm becoming my dad.
No, not in the slightest.
Okay.
No, not in the slightest. I was thinking, when I was surrounded by family and my dad, they were drinking 3% lagers, right? It was a can of Tennent's, right?
Yep.
It was a 3% lager, and then they were having a 40% blend, and I guarantee you they were not 43% blends. It was a 40% blend that was then being diluted to within an inch of its life.
Yeah, sure.
And it's so interesting to think when we had those nights of what sounds like, and I was careful with my description here, but what sounds like debauched drinking, right? Bacchanalian events amongst family. There wasn't really a lot of percentage of alcohol being consumed.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right? And on this Friday evening, on my Shabbat, when I'm sending you a photo before Shabbat started of that beer, it really made me think, and again, a story I've told you and I've certainly told our listeners, of my dad being at my flat in Aberdeen and having the octave of Glenfarclas that we bottled for our Whiskey Society that was 60, 61, 62% alcohol. And my dad saying, "Oh, that's like rocket fuel, but it's good." It really. I was hiking with a friend yesterday, and we actually had some heavily sherried Port Charlotte while we're out in the snowy woods, and he'd made the comment, "Oh, it really warms the chest." I think it was 61 or 62% alcohol, and that made me think of my dad as well. Oh, it really warms the chest. But I was curious, and why I wanted to bring it to you, and why I want our listeners to be thinking about this for themselves right now is, what did you grow up amongst? Did you have any similar family gatherings? Were you observing alcohol consumption that, and I'm curious, at the time seemed like a lot, but in hindsight, we drink damn sight stronger stuff? I promise you I haven't had any so far. That might be the problem.
That's a good question. I remember my mother and father having parties. Now, one thing to keep in mind, my mom and dad divorced in the early 80s. So 81, right? And so I was maybe 8 years old or so, 7 or 8 years old. But I remember before then, around the ages of 6 and 7, of being the person who is in charge of delivering martinis to people. Like, oh, can you get someone to drink? Can you pour some wine for this person? And I felt like the most important person in the room. Like, it was my responsibility to make sure people were having drinks and having a good time.
Oh, I would posit that you were the most important person in the room.
There's no doubt in my mind. And so I definitely remember that and look back on those fondly. There were never any raucous parties, right? It was just, people in their 30s having drinks and so on. But
people who seemed like they were in their 60s, who were in their 30s.
Right, but Yeah, exactly, right? But the late 70s and early 80s in the U.S., I mean, that was all your clear alcohols. That was your vodkas and your gins. And, we had some... In fact, I've got one of the bottles on my shelf here. We have some Johnny Walkers and Dewars from the 70s, and that would be the special stuff. That would be, okay, most of the people have gone away. Now we're going to play cards and maybe have a little whiskey, something like that, or have a liqueur. There was always a bottle of Sabra. Yeah.
There was another level to take this to.
Yeah.
That wasn't until much later, and really I think it was my Uncle Frank who maybe got into single malts first. But there wasn't another place for them to take it to. When they started on cans of lager and some mixed whiskey, that's where it ended. Several hours later. So that's interesting to hear that there would be a transition in cards and then almost like a slowing down of the intake, but an increase in the quality.
Yeah, right? And it just seemed as if, if you had a party and let's say there was 20 people coming, maybe 4 or 5 of them are your closer friends. And people dash out a bit early and your closer friends kind of stick around, and that's when they broke out the quote-unquote good stuff, which I would argue 70s Johnny Walker is really good stuff. So I remember that, but then by the time the early 80s came around, my parents had split, and my mom started dating here and there, and then found her, my stepdad. And then there would be, the various holiday gatherings. And it didn't have that same kind of feel. Like when my mom and dad were together and throwing these parties, they were always at our house. And all of the holiday gatherings were at my stepdad's family's house. And it just felt different. Not worse, not better, just different. And my role as the person to deliver drinks had changed. I was just like the kid in the other room with the other kids kind of thing,
Yeah, that's a shame. I definitely think about being with my cousin and I making drinks and sipping drinks and that was kind of a why would an adult drink any of this? But also, and the reason I make that comment there about people who are in their 30s and, when you're 8 years old, you just assume, God, they're ancient, like they're going to die any day. You kind of feel bad for them. But it was interesting watching my uncles and my aunt aging, and then you'd see someone falling asleep in a chair, right? Where that never used to be a part of it. Or I remember my grandfather, who would have been in his 70s at the time, who was a notorious drinker, him just being I can't help but slip into some Scots here, but you just simply describe him as fucking comatose, right? I remember looking into the corner and seeing my grandpa. I would probably be in about maybe 13, 15, something like that, and just thinking, oh my God, he's fucking comatose. And then you've just got his sons just slapping him across the face, like, hey, wake up, time for bed. And then they under an arm each and up the stairs to bed. But just thinking, it wasn't particularly strong alcohol that got there. And so I'm curious, bringing you into the second part of my reflection here. You drink a lot of strong stuff as well, because you're just like me. We share, similar beers and similar whiskeys, right? Do you ever stop to think about the strengths that are now commonplace? Have you had any other family members go, how much? What's the strength of that?
I guess on the whiskey side of things, I really don't talk about whiskey with my family members except for my dad. You know, when he'll come out, he lives in New Mexico. Like when he came out for Mimi's bat mitzvah, right? And he was staying at our house. You know, we had a night or two where we would just sit outside, drink whiskey, and smoke cigars. And, you know, that first whiskey, I would always make sure, you know, he likes his whiskey, but he's not a whiskey guy. And so, like, all right, let me pour him something that's 43, 46%. And hear him go, ooh. Right? And I'm like, yeah, just you finish that one, and then I'll break out the higher stuff, right? And you know, he likes his Glenlivets, and he likes his Balvenis, and he likes his Glenfiddichs and things like that. But when he comes to my house, you know, I make sure he drinks really well. I just know we have to, not that drinking those isn't drinking well.
But
you know, we have to ease into some of the single cask and cask strength and special edition stuff. I will say personally, from a beer perspective, I have started targeting more lower alcohol beers. If I'm going to take the time to drink a beer, I know I'm taking in more calories than I really want to be. You know, given this time where I'm consistently trying to lose weight / maintain weight. And so if I'm going to drink a beer, then I want to be having beer. And if I'm going to have one beer, I want to have 2 beers. And if I'm going to have 2 beers, I don't want to be passing out. So like a good 4.5% lager, pilsner, saison, Marzen, you know, something like that is it really piques my interest and gets me excited about beer because I know I can have a few and just not be sloshed.
But even that is a remarkable number to me, and I think I've brought this up. You know, we've done this podcast long enough. You know, it's like infinite monkeys typing out Shakespeare at this point. But I remember being not too long in the United States and having a Cinder Cone Red from Deschutes, a brewery that I love out in the Pacific Northwest, Bend, Oregon, to be precise. And
okay,
right, and I remember having their Cinder Cone Red, and I had a 12-ounce bottle of it, and I remember thinking, oh, that's making me feel a little ticklish. And I looked at the label and it was 5.2%. And I thought to myself, holy shit, that's 5.2%. Like, my goodness, what am I drinking? And since then, just
that's session
5, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15.
5-6%,
like,
that's session beer these days.
Right, and so you're very point there. But then I also remember you and I being in Chicago, and who is it who's next to the diner? Who's the brewery?
Oh, Revolution next to Chicago
Revolution.
Diner. Yeah.
Right, and we went in there together, and they had a porter, and it was 3.2%.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a number I remember. Right?
Yeah.
This is the strength of a beer. This is something you can drink at lunch and then go back to work. This is something you can drink after lunch and still after work. And still communicate with your family. Right? To your very point of, if I can sit and have a couple of 5s, I'm not going to get sloshed, and I'm going to be able to have the rest of my evening. 3.2 in a porter is a number, and I, you know, and that's when I think about the lagers that were being consumed by all my uncles.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was around that. Like, our lagers didn't even have a strength on them, right? It was just a can of lager, and that's what you drank.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it probably was around 3, and you could have a fair few of them with a mixed whiskey that your 40% was diluted way down as well. What a very different type of drinking than we do now.
See, now, between this conversation where we're talking about low ABV beer and the arborists outside cutting trees down, I'm thinking of spring, and my spring / summer go-to beer for the past couple of years has been that German grapefruit beer that starts with an H. It's like 2.8%, and it's just like it's like a 50-50 of lager and grapefruit juice. And I can pound the ever-living shit out of that and just mow the lawn and pull weeds and just have a day. And it's just, that's it. You're not getting drunk. You're just having a delicious drink. You're maintaining a nice little happy feeling, but you're not getting plastered. I like that.
Yeah, I remember I met up with Martin Deraz in San Diego back when he was still in his Highland Park brand ambassadorial days. And I remember he ordered one of those. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at it like, what's one of them? And then he started to describe, well, if I'm going to a number of accounts and if I'm having a friendly drink along the way, or if I'm even feeling a little thirsty, this is what I'm going to order. And I was kind of like, oh, gosh, look at that number. You don't see that every day in America. So I do. I know exactly what you're talking about there. Maybe I'll get a rake of those in for the spring as well.
Do you know, I think I may have found a link, albeit quite tenuous, link between what we're talking about now and a bit of what we were discussing with David Stirk and Mark Watt, which we're going to be transitioning over to in just a moment. And, going back to that audio and editing it and just listening to part of what was discussed, they talked about this evolution of the whiskey drinker, right? And the evolution of how whiskey producers / brands catered to markets or discovered new markets, and where you had, the old Scottish tins of shortbread and the tartans, and then you move on to younger crowds and NAS whiskey, and just, it doesn't have to be so twee. It could be just fun and cool. And David and Mark sort of not just watching that evolution, but sort of helping that evolution along. And here we are talking,
being a part of it,
right? And that's exactly what we talked about, where you said, what were our parents doing from a drinking perspective as compared to what we were doing from a drinking perspective? And now we're starting to revert to what they were doing with the lower alcohol stuff. So it's interesting to see this evolution / de-evolution of drinking.
Well, and I think as well, the story that we charted with Pete Curry, who came of age in the late 90s with university, with what his dad was doing with Gordon MacPhail, and kind of has lived this 2-decade, starting to stare 2.5 decades in the face now, but it has lived this kind of whiskey life during this, severe, extreme uptick in whiskey. And now to have this conversation with David and Mark, who were slightly farther along in the late 90s than Pete was. Although now that I say it, Mark Watt might actually be younger than Pete Curry.
I think he is. And this is no offense to Mark, but Pete has more of a baby face than Mark does.
He does.
And Mark has a bit more gray.
Mark looks like he's lived a life.
Yeah, but in a good way, right? It's like when the actors, right, like Sean Connery, just kept on getting better looking and better looking. That's Mark. He's lived a life. He's got the gray hair. But Pete Curry just looks younger because he's got that sweet baby face.
I think it also shows the difference between a decade in Los Angeles and a decade in Campbelltown. And I'm only talking about the weather, not the drinking habits of its inhabitants. Have we said enough to throw this over to ourselves?
I think we have. One thing that I want our listeners to know, the audio from both Mark and David's side isn't perfect. You're going to hear a little hissing. I tried to improve the audio as best I could. It doesn't sound terrible. It's just a little hissy here and there. And Dave, you may remember this, Jason. David's computer fan kept on every once in a while going like that.
I remember it very well. Very well.
And we actually talk about it in the
I
interview.
might have brought it up.
Yeah. But that aside, go ahead.
It's the age of COVID. I think we've all come to terms with the fact that nothing is perfect.
Right, exactly. And that aside, the content of the conversation I thought was great. I loved hearing the origin story of how these two met and started working in the industry together and now are focused on, in part, their electric coupe series, which is pretty exciting. So, yeah, let's hand it over to the wonderful, inimitable David Stirk and Mark Watt, our first and fourth interviews in the One Nation Under Whiskey podcast.
Perfect. So here we are. This is a crazy moment for us because we're sitting with guest number 1 and guest number 4 from 5 years ago, which is insane to consider. A few things have happened since then, and I'm sure we'll get into some of it as we go along. But as I was thinking about sitting down with you gentlemen, I should say David Stirk and Mark Watt, and here's Joshua, and I'm Jason. And
thank you for introducing us.
Everyone knows when you say number 1 and number 4, it's going to be us. So.
Well, I know what number 1 is, and I know what number 2 is. I've never gotten to number 4.
There's a fourth base in there, Joshua.
So I was starting to think, as I was looking forward to seeing the two of you, how did your friendship start? What's the story there?
I was working as a waitress.
It was a purely happen chance, wasn't it?
I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar.
I was at he was, that's right. I needed a band member. I was at Speyside, I think with my dad the first time I met you. I can't remember. And I can't remember if I was on my own then. I was still at university, so I was on my own, but I'd been asked to do tastings at the festival because that was brand spanking new. Nobody was doing tastings. And you were working as a waitress in the Highlander, in the Craig Hotel.
Craig Hotel, Quaker Bar.
And you were about the closest person to my age, I think, in the entire industry. So that's kind of how we met. The rest kind of is just history, really.
What year are we talking there? If you're looking at the beginning of the Speyside Festival, you're talking 96, 7, 8?
It was 98.
Somewhere around there.
7 or 8. Yeah.
I only became legal in 98.
Okay. That's a game changer, obviously. You'd never had a drink until you turned 18. It's a hell of a story.
He didn't work in the hotel till he turned 18. Or at least pouring drinks without superfood.
I was a late developer. I didn't start drinking until I was 16. I'm very un-Scottish. It's just
you make me feel bad.
Yes,
I was 15 and I thought I was right on course. 16 being a late developer, maybe I was later than I thought I was.
I grew up in Speyside, so things are a bit different.
Gosh, I grew up in Ayrshire.
I'll be Glenmorangie with your porridge in the morning. No, Barclays.
So 105. So if you both met at the Quay while Mark, you were the waitress. You were serving drinks.
Yeah, I was serving them drinks.
All right. So that's meeting number 1. What was the second meeting? I mean, right now we're at a point now where you two, at least as of this date, you two have released your second in the electric coupe series. Your friendship now goes back 23-ish years. So that was your first meeting. What was the meeting where you two really hit it off and started to connect more? Was there ever a time, David, when you were working with Springbank that you connected with Mark, or where were your other meetings? We're just trying to figure out how this all came together.
Initially, they were all up in Speyside, so Mark lived in Dufton, and I would come up for both festivals every year, and I did that for the first 5, 6 years, something like that. So if we didn't catch up during the year at another festival, of which there weren't that many back then, then we would catch up at the Speyside festivals. And then when I worked for Whisky Magazine, I would get Mark involved in anything I possibly could. And I think within a very short space time of me joining Whisky Magazine, I think that's when you joined Duncan Taylor.
Yeah.
So we would then bump into festivals as I was at Cadenheads and Mark was at Duncan Taylor. But certainly initially, and most of our best stories are all from those years early on in Dufton, when we were quite a bit younger and carefree and capable of drinking a lot longer than I can now. Yeah. I'm gonna come back to this building friendship. I'm just curious right now. On the last episode, we had Pete Curry, and we talked about tracking that period of the late '90s through where he is now in LA and 2021, 2022. You guys are saying there wasn't much in the way of festivals. We saw each other occasionally. When you ended up at Whisky Magazine, David, you started finding ways to work with Mark. How did the industry feel in '98? What was the Speyside Festival like in '98? Was it 30 guys in anoraks standing in a field looking at each other?
Yeah, it was.
It sounds like I've just described dogging, but
it was much smaller.
Completely.
It's completely different. But it was much different. It was much smaller. Like the initial whisky festival, a lot of the tastings took place at the back of the Dufton Whisky Shop, which is quite small. The first tasting I ever did was there in the back of the festival. And I think David might have been there. And, Kate, my wife, was there. Mike, that owns the whisky shop, was there. It's funny, all these people that happened to be there. So it was tiny, but all the good people were there. But the industry was totally different. There was a lot less shows, and there was a lot less people doing shows. So those of us that were in the industry at the time, some of us, if you happened to sync up with the same importers or whatever, you saw a lot of the same people. Because, like now, where companies have 74 brand ambassadors covering 3 markets, there was one, and it wasn't even a brand ambassadors we were called back then, you were just workers, and you covered the world. So you would do every show every weekend around the world, and so you were always working. So, like, Kate, my wife, was in the industry for the same amount of time, but we managed to go, this is before we lived together, before we were married, obviously, but we, before we got together, we'd met each other a few times, and then didn't see each other on the circuit for 4 years.
Huh.
So it just depended on if your importers did the same shows or whatever. But there was a lot less shows and there was a lot less industry people. So if you got in the right sync, you would see people a lot. I remember Grant McPherson for Carnage, seeing him 6 weekends in a row. I didn't even see the people I lived with that much. It used to be heavy work, but it was good fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was interesting at the time because you had people creating parts of the industry that they wanted to see created. So I was very lucky to have worked at Whisky Magazine with a guy called Marcin Miller, and Marcin came in with a much more, and it's going to sound weird, but a much more 21st century view of the industry than it had itself. And Mark and I did too. Yeah, I think one of the things that Mark and I bonded over straight away was we didn't like the stuffiness of the industry. The two of us never understood why there needed to be so much structure, and you had to sit down and listen to someone and add you water before you drank it and all this kind of stuff, and you didn't like the tartan and the tins and all this. And that was the way the industry was going, and the people who were doing the whiskey festivals, so Fiona Murdoch, who owned the shop before Mike Lord did, she was a big part of that, and the people that jumped on board, a lot of them were not whiskey folk, as in they weren't from the tartan twee tins and shortbread view of it all. and really couldn't care less. So it became much more an industry of let's get past all of the hyperbole and let's get to what is the product like. And Marcin's part of that, definitely. And as I said, Mark and Kate and Pete and all these young people came in and forced the industry, really. And we systematically watched the demographic drop from 55 to knocking on heaven's door down to mid-30s and a lot more women coming in. You know, the first few festivals, it was really, I mean, I hate to say this, but really just partners tagging along. There were a few very knowledgeable women and very
I think one of the things
few on their own.
I think one of the things with the age changing as well was there is a kind of missing generation in whiskey, because there is the old boys, you know, the Jim McEwens, etc., but because there was that lull in the 80s, you know, it goes from them to us, and unfortunately now we're the old boys.
You watch your mouth. You watch your mouth, Mark.
Quite depressing. You know,
hey Mark, some older than the rest of us.
Yeah, but you know, there's if you look around the industry, there's not that many people from us to retirement age. There's the legends, obviously, but there's not that many people in that gap. And now there's a lot more. So we were it kind of skipped a generation, and then it was people like me, David, Kate, etc., coming on. And I think that probably helped to change the demographic a wee bit.
They tended to be distillery managers, Ian Millers, people like that.
Yeah.
But they were people who had either fallen into the industry or had gone via brewing and distilling, or your Bill Lumsden's who went via, what did he do, yeast and all that kind of stuff. They kind of almost fell in by accident. But after that, you have a generation of, I love this industry and I want to work in it, which is where certainly Mark and I and Kate and Pete and all these other people have come from. And there are a few that fell into it as well. You know, well, that sounds like a fun job, I'll do that. But there's quite a few who really did pursue it, and that has changed. That's changed the industry. It really has. You know, we wouldn't have your whiskey sponges and even your Sukhinder Singhs. You know, we wouldn't have those kind of people. He aggressively pursued the industry and kicked it into the 21st century. So yeah, Mark's quite right. There is I hate being called a veteran now. That's
yeah, I hate that.
I'm 45. I'm not a veteran.
So I really like what you said, where you worked to change the demographic of the consumer, and I wonder, like, what were the tactics, and did you even know they were tactics at the time, or was it just a matter of outreach? And what did that outreach look like?
That's a very good question. I was part of something that helped change the demographics. I wouldn't say I ever actively, well, I suppose I did, because I brought people in who were my peers, and it's one of those things, it's when it's contagious. You bring people in, you bring other people in. You find all clubs where a couple of people enjoy a dram, and before you know it, the whole street's heard about it, and before you know it, the town's heard about it, and you've got 100 members. And I've definitely been a part of that, and so has Mark, and our passion, and all of our passion has been contagious to the point where, you know, the effect we've had on the industry has changed the demographic. And certainly our generation has come in with a view of, I don't care who you are, drink. You know, there's absolutely no stuffing. It's a brilliant generation that we've got, because we just don't care about any of the things that went before. We don't think it's a man's drink. We don't think it's an old fuddy drink. But the demographic itself changed because you had a sweeping movement that kind of went through Europe and the Far East and America to a certain extent, where these young groups of people would get together and just form whiskey clubs. And we started to see them coming out of the woodwork at the festivals and things. And it'd be like, wow, so there's 30 of you guys and you're all in your 20s and you're all passionate about whiskey. Well, there's nothing like that where I live, you know. And you started to see that sort of, it became cool to do that. That's a horrible word to use.
Groovy.
Groovy. Down with the kids. Yeah. I remember 20 years ago going to Sweden, and there was an all-women whiskey club.
Wow.
20 years ago. All women. I know they had 40, 50 members or something. And to them, it was nothing, they maybe have had partners that were in an all-male club or something. So they made their own club. And I never did the tasting for them, but I know they still exist. That was 20 years ago. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
I think with the movements of the Whiskey Lives and all the new shows as well, we were at the right time where we were starting to put pour whiskey to punters. It wasn't, we're launching a new whiskey, we'll invite the same 5 journalists that we invite all the time, or the same bar staff or whatever. And it was, let's have a festival, let's let general public that have an interest in whiskey in. And when you've got someone across the table from you, you can pour them anything and you get that automatic feedback. And I think that was brilliant in getting more people involved. Because people are there to taste it. There was far too much stuffiness of sit through 2-hour presentations before we tell you how much this costs and blah blah blah. Just there you go. Drink it. Do you like it? Boom. Yes, you like it. Okay, we'll try this direction. Or you don't like it, we'll try that direction. It's I think we got in when that change was happening. That you would get people like me getting to try a new release at a whiskey festival, rather than it being at an event held at Edinburgh Castle for 5 people that don't even like whiskey, but they sign the check.
Sorry, Jason.
Did you
go ahead?
Did you get a sense that as you were trying to make it more modern and younger, you were still seeing some of the tartan around the edges, some of the shortbread tin messaging around the edges? And did you get a feeling that punters themselves started to reject that? Or did you see it more like there was an age group who went out with that as you guys were pouring for a different segment, a different demographic?
Definitely. You had, I think sometimes companies got lucky with some of their advertising, not realizing they were giving the customers exactly what they wanted. A good example of that would be Abelauer Brunner. And Abelauer had this juxtaposition of the 10-year-old still looking like it came from the 60s, and Abelauer Brunner, which was everything a whiskey consumer wanted in a bottle. It told you everything you wanted to know. It was uncolored. It was there was no water added. Blah blah blah. And I think David Boyd actually deserves a lot of credit.
That's a great example.
Who's retired recently. And whether I might have actually done him a disservice. He may have actually had his finger on the pulse, because David is an incredibly intelligent guy, and he may have fought tooth and nail to get that series out. And of course now, every distiller has something along those lines which says this is what people want. They're not bothered about backstory, about fairies, about goblins, about any of this nonsense. Give us as much information as possible. Don't muck about with it. Treat us like educated people. And there certainly was a fringe of the companies being a bit slow. I mean, Mark will agree. There were the one. Glenn Murray's probably a good example, and Ian, God bless him, is brilliant now, but
he's fought his own fights.
Yeah, he's still,
yes, he has.
Yeah.
But I think in connection with that, the internet has changed things hugely. I remember, 20 years ago being part of whiskey forums online. We'd meet up on a Wednesday night and chat, have some drams and chat, and it wasn't like this. It was typing a message, and someone else would type a message, and you would end up, by the end of the night, you couldn't read any messages because everyone was pissed. But it allowed. I mean, I look back to some of the guys in the forums I was on. I was part-time working at Royal Mile Whiskies, just in the shop. Great shop that it is. And I'd be going on and speaking to guys in America and speaking to guys all over, and they were drinking Ardbeg, Provenances and all these kind of things. And obviously I was sat there with my cheap bottle of whatever, because I couldn't. But we all spoke equally. There wasn't. I mean, there's always going to be some idiot that's like, "Oh, look what I've got," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I can't afford that. But I got mine for free, so it's even better." So I think that helped, and then it allowed distillers, companies, etc., to target people more directly and get their information. It did also allow people to get bits of information, which is always dangerous. But we can kick that out of them. But it is. I think there's lots of things that have came together to allow things to move forward. But I do always remember, I say, being a student with my bottle of Balvenie Double, with great whiskey, and speaking to guys all over the world and girls all over the world, and just because of whiskey, and it allowed people, it allowed people from different walks of life to discuss this. Oh, have you tried this? This is new coming out, and that kind of started and built on. I mean, it's much more crazy these days, obviously, and pandemic has made it even crazier. But it was good times. It was, again, the whiskey industry is global. It's huge, but it's tiny. It's kind of, we all know each other. So if you mess up, you really mess up because everybody knows about it. But it is interesting how small a lot of things are. There's different niches that stick together, if that makes sense.
Well, it was interesting for us interviewing Georgie Crawford and really meeting her for the first time.
Great.
And how many times Mark Watt is mentioned in that, which explains a lot of where her life has ended up. But
that poor woman.
But it was right. But or speaking to Pete Curry and him bumping into Kate in a bar in Barcelona at the time that he'd applied for a Springbank job. Like, it's such a minuscule industry, but it's wonderful to see great people who have found great people and hang out and do different projects together, which we'll circle back to. Joshua, I talked over your question.
I'm trying to remember who brought this statement up, and Jason, it may have been Pete Curry, but the general statement was, and I've been thinking about this for the past few weeks, the general statement was that it was so interesting that you would get a group of people together to not only drink whiskey, but to talk about whiskey while drinking whiskey. And I wonder if in those earlier days, was that as much a thing as it is now? After we get off this conversation, I'm headed up to some friend's house, and we're going to pour some whiskeys, and we're going to talk about those whiskeys. One of which, by the way, is this Tony Cole Caperdonic, by the way.
That brings us both into the conversation, Mark.
And so, did you watch that evolution where the conversation with whiskey became a conversation about whiskey with whiskey?
No, I think that was always there, but I think, as Mark said, we suddenly had an environment where you didn't have to listen to somebody waffle on for an hour and a half, giving you not only how whiskey was made and the history of every brick in the bloody distillery. We got to a level, and he made me remember George Grant, who would always stand up in front of a learned audience and say, right, I'm going to spend the next half an hour telling you how whiskey's made, and to see everybody lose the will to live. And he said, I'm just kidding. You all know how it's made. Let's drink and talk. and I think that's for me, one of the nicest parts of the whiskey industry as compared to, say, maybe the wine industry, is that we don't need to learn that much in each of the tastings, and it's far more. And even the people who do all these tastings and the brand ambassadors and the brand owners, they want to hear everybody else's opinion and everybody else's story with it. And I think that's always been there. I think it just started to come out when Mark and I started in the industry, because we started to see these small group tastings. We started to see brand ambassadors, people who were more engaging than trying to tell people things. So yeah, I think it was just a case of, right, from now on, this is a two-way conversation. You tell me and we'll talk about it, rather than you taste this, you taste this, you taste this, bye-bye, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think also people were able to approach, no offence, David, but people like me and you easier with their questions than
'Cause we
maybe
look
if
stupid.
if you're approaching Frank McCarthy or Jim McEwen or, you know, Colin Ross, bless his soul, or whatever. You know, people are in awe, you know, and you just listen. You don't necessarily want to look stupid in front of your peers, whereas it's okay to ask me a stupid question because, well, you probably know as much as I. You know, I think that probably helped. I mean, there was always a bit of that when you were younger, people asking you questions to prove that they knew more than you did, which I always love. But, you know, it's, I think, like, the younger generation come through made it more approachable to ask questions rather than, you know, God, what if I say something stupid in front of Ian Miller? Well, I've done that many times, but, you know, or whoever you may wish to pick, you know, it's I think it definitely made it easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I had a completely different line of questioning that would take us down a separate rabbit hole. And I definitely want to go there, but Jason, if you had something you wanted to add here, I want to give you that chance.
Yeah, from the history section, I just wanted to confirm that the two of you were never in Campbelltown at the same time. I don't mean a crime was committed. I mean, when you were working there professionally, you never overlapped in that professional portion of your life. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Actually, Mark and I have never been in the same room together, so we could actually be the same person. No, I think, actually, thinking about it, Mark, I think the first time you and I were in Campbelltown at the same time was earlier this year picking the Cask for Electric Coupe. I don't think we've been in...
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, no, you did turn up at a festival once.
Oh, yes, that's right, I did, yes.
But, like, I was busy, so I didn't manage to
and I was driving, so I was dull. Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
that's
you're right.
probably
You're
why I
quite
didn't
right.
speak to you.
But
but
it is
the first time we spent any time together was in this room,
yes,
tasting the samples for Q2.
Wow, that's mental, absolutely mental. Before we go to Joshua's question, I keep hearing this kind of like whooshing noise. Do either of you have anything?
It's my Mac.
That you're... interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's overheating from all the porn.
I thought it was just odd gas. I didn't know what it was.
If I do this, Joshua... yes. See if I ever meet Steve Jobs, I'm going to kill him. No, that's a terrible joke.
No,
it's got some sort of fan problem. Sorry, it's so I don't know if you can edit that out or whatever.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Cool. Okay, Josh.
It's not doing it now.
So I think I see a correlation here, and I could definitely be wrong, and I could be conflating two things that need not be conflated. But I really loved what you both said, which was you saw and helped along the change in demographics, right? And you were part of many other people, right, doing this, right, bringing a newer generation of whiskey drinkers in. But I think at the same time, we saw this evolution of whiskey being bottled, where there was definitely old school style whiskeys, and now we started seeing different whiskeys, more spirit driven, more NAS happening. You know, is there any correlation to that? Is bringing more people in, hence more whiskey being bottled, changed what's being available for bottlers to bottle? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I think there may be a correlation here.
Yeah, well, the more people that buy whiskey, the less stock you've got to give people. So, you know, and again, you look at, it's a bit of this thing where people will go on about older whiskey. You know, when we started in the industry, you know, I was bottling 66 Bowmores like they were going out of fashion, 72 Caperdonics and all these kind of things. But that was 20 years ago. So that's the equivalent of bottling a 92 now, which is still phenomenal, don't get me wrong. But people forget that time has moved on.
Has it?
And
Oh,
so,
it has.
yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm sure you guys all do this. When you look at a stock list or a cask list, you're like, 2,000, that's really young. And you're like, oh, God, it's 21 years old. It's no wonder it's so expensive. I've missed a decade somewhere, but it's, I think, like the no-need statement thing, that was a stock issue. But there again, you go back long enough, there's been no-need statements for forever.
Yeah.
Glenfiddich was an 8, then it was a 9, then it was an 8, then it was a 12, then it was, it's nothing new. To be honest, there's very little in the industry that is new, that hasn't been done at some point before. But if you... I'm not going to doubt. I would say that, but if you're some people and you do it, you win awards for it being innovative, and if you're other people, there's like, that's been done before.
Dipping a toe in controversy, I like it. Just dipping a toe. See how it feels. Depends on who you are.
Yeah, and it's very strange when you think about it. Mark and I have been, and you guys as well to a certain extent, but more Mark and I, because we're over here and you're over there. We've been privy to some unbelievable whiskey, some absolutely mind-blowing whiskey. And between us, we've probably drunk enough whiskey to have bought Bruichladdich when it was sold, And then you can lament and mourn that period. And there are enough people who do that say, that the industry hit its zenith in the late 60s, early 70s, and everything after that's pish. But at the same time, if you'd have said to both of us when we met that in 2021 we will have more distilleries than Scotland's ever had, and not only that, but a lot of them are knocking out belters, absolute stunners, and the future looks amazing, we'd have laughed at you. We were in a period of decline. Distilleries were still closing. When the Currys opened Arran, people were laughing their heads off. Oh, you're insane. You'll have to sell it all for blending, is what the initial premise of the distillery was. Wow. And if Ewan Mitchell was with us now, he'd be saying, yeah, right chance. I need more malt than I can get my hands on. So it's a up and down industry, always has been, but I think we've been so lucky to catch it at a period where, as Mark says, he was bottling 60s Bowmores like they were going out of fashion, and now they are the unicorn of the industry. And he and I can get together and reminisce and lament and talk about all this stuff. Neither of us could afford to keep them and put them away, but we were there when it happened. So we're a walking, history of what went on. We're still living and breathing history of what went on, but at the same time, we're both so passionate about what the future holds as well.
Yeah.
So it's a good mix. It's a heady mix.
Yeah, I guess, really quickly, Jason, I'm sorry. I guess maybe I should have rephrased my question in that it's obvious whiskey has changed, right? Like you had said, Mark, time has gone on. Production styles have changed from distillery to distillery, from brewer's yeast to a combination of brewers and distillers to distiller's yeast, to maximizing output, so you're shortening fermentation times, et cetera, et cetera. So because of all of this, whiskey has changed and had to change. And of course, there was that lull period in the 80s where we had so many closures. But do you think the change of whiskey profiles helped in any way to bring in this younger demographic and help to grow whiskey in general? Do you think that perhaps those older styles were less appealing to the masses and the newer styles allowed more people to come in?
It's an interesting question. I think in general, whiskey's probably much more consistent and probably of a higher standard overall these days than it ever was. And, the process, as you say, things change. I grew up at Macallan and we used to speak about the 4 different types of yeast that they used. They don't speak about that anymore, and there's going to be, and every little change you make, no matter how little, when you add up 100 little changes, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I think we're much more knowledgeable on the process and everything these days, and how to tweak things so that you can get a different flavour without necessarily having to do it the old way. Has that allowed people to come in? I think there's a lot more bottlings have came out that are probably a bit more accessible to the mass audience. Like I always say, and it's probably just because I've never won anything, apart from Young Brand Ambassador of the Year. I'm sure Pete Curry mentioned that in his one, because I was the first and he was the second. But
he did mention it.
Just like to get that dig in there. Although they only let me keep it for like 4 months and then they gave it to Pete, but never mind. But
they were like, "You're not Pete Curry? Oh, we've made a horrible mistake." It was the original Oscars La La Land.
Yeah. Where was it going with this now? There's a lot more accessible whiskies for a general population. And this is where I was going with this comment, because I've never won anything. When you go to whiskey shows, and a lot of them will have the dram of the day, and people are asked to vote for what the favourite dram is.
Yeah.
You don't want to win that, because if you win that, you're vanilla. Everyone's liked you, and you've kept everyone happy. What you really want is a dram that that some people love and some people, I'm not saying people hate. You're not bottling something that people don't like, but you don't want to appeal to the masses. You want to have, as an independent bottler, you want to have variations.
Yeah. Yep.
Otherwise, what's the point? If they all taste the same and they're hitting that sweet spot, then just bottle the one thing and be done with it. So I think, it's in some ways having a more uniform style is quite good. It gets more people in, but it's not necessary. I think people come into that and then people move up and go, right, I want to find an independent bottler. Yeah. And they look for difference and they want to try a Glenallachie that is different from what Billy's done, or they want to try, whatever distillery from a different standpoint. So by becoming more uniform, people are looking for the differences. That's a back to front answer, but never mind.
No, I think it makes good sense. The comment I was going to make a moment ago was, again, going back to when we sat on your couch and interviewed you for the first episode, David, we were in Scotland for your celebration of, opening a new premises. The things you poured at that dinner were remarkable, absolutely out of this world. And all four of us were there eating and drinking, having a jolly good time.
I still have my tasting mat from it. That's how good it was.
So do I.
I do too. Yes. And it's in a box when I moved 3 years ago, so I don't have it in front of me, but I do have it. But that was remarkable what you had access to. And coming back to Mark's earlier point here of seeing some of the cask sheets, where you're just kind of like, 2006? I'm not buying a 2006. Wait, your 2006 is 14 years old? 15 years old? Like, I think you've got a digit wrong here. It is crazy now to look at, the 93 that we just bottled and think how long ago that was, or, a 74 Invergordon. The ages now are just mental. But the question that I had connected to this conversation is, do you think everybody is precious about the whiskey decade that they cut their teeth? Or do you think it's particular to a type of person, or how much excitement do you see? Joshua is showing us a 1980 Glenfarclas Christmas tree.
Oh, look at that!
Single castation Penderyn from Stirk. Nice.
Well, sample
bottle of.
I'm gonna open it now.
Capardonic, nice.
You're just opening it now?
I haven't opened it yet.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
And we're going to go all Welsh on you, boyos.
There goes that demographic.
That was a Welsh accent.
It was nice. Yeah. The Indians have tuned out. The Welsh have tuned out. The Jamaicans are on the fence right now.
Go straight into the Punjab. I'm allowed to. My wife's Welsh. I'm allowed to. Anyway,
So
yes,
do you think people are precious about that? Because I remember in the 90s when I was cutting my teeth on whiskey, so many people said, "Oh, the Ardbegs of the 70s are the real Ardbegs. There'll never be another Ardbeg like that," which may very well be true, but there will be other Ardbegs, and some will be very, very good. So, what was your experience of that? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think yeah, we've seen enough, haven't we, Mark, of people who were, as I said before, you have that crowd that if it's not from between 1967 and 1974, it ain't whiskey. But I think one of the beauties of this is that stuff just keeps popping up that blows your mind. As long as you're open-minded. What I was going to say earlier, actually, and I forgot to, is that, and I'm sure Mark will back me up, I've seen a lot less of people from when I started, and Mark will definitely get this, having worked in the bars, of those people coming up and say, "I only drink insert brand." And that used to be really, really, especially in Scotland, I'm a Bell's drinker, I'm a Grouse drinker, I'm a Macallan drinker. And that was it. And I used to remember doing the tastings through the UK, and you'd have some seriously old boys there coming up and say, "Well, that was very interesting tasting and all, but I just drink famous Grouse." And I said, "Well, that £100 you just spent was wasted, wasn't it? Because every single whiskey I poured blew that out of the water." When I worked for Cadenhead's, obviously. So I've certainly seen a sweeping. I mean, I rarely hear that now. Absolutely, you'd have to be in an airport in Chicago or something to hear that. And quite frankly, you ignore it now and sort of chuckle to yourself. You just don't hear that at tastings anymore. I only drink Macallan. I only drink, whatever.
Yeah.
I used to find that a challenge, though. I used to quite like people like that. That you just, you hear them say that and you pour them something and they're like, "Oh, that's amazing." And then you tell them what it is. And you're like, "Oh, right." But I think, I used to have a mate of mine that didn't like Caperdonic. He said that Caperdonic is a blending whiskey because, the distillery never produced any single malt for its own right, so why should I like it? And I would pour him Caperdonic and he'd be like, "Oh, that's amazing." And then you'd tell him what it is and he's like, "Oh, no, that's crazy." he ran away with my girlfriend and I kept the Caperdonic, so it was a win-win. But
I had a feeling this was a former friend of which you were speaking.
Oh, no, he's still a friend. We're tight on Facebook, so it's all good. But,
that's not your Dufftown girlfriend, is it?
No, it was another one.
Because that story is legendary, but that's for another time.
That sounds like part two.
Yeah, Mark and I and Girls in Dufftown, we don't have the best.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You could have been rich, David. You could have been rich.
Yeah, I've only ever been chatted up once in my life, and that was a girl that came up to me and said, "Do you want to be rich?" True. Mark was there. True story. Story. Yeah. It's not as flat. It's not flattering. Trust me. But anyway.
It's an interesting point, though, Mark, that you bring up about your friend's comment about Caperdonic being only for blending. If that statement had come to you in 1998 when you were in the Quake room, you could say that about a lot of distilleries now that were primarily for blending, however, have launched their own malts and have become a brand in their own right.
Well, there's a couple of things behind that.
Yeah.
One, how do you get people to like your whiskey? Close your distillery. It worked for Port Ellen, It's I'm only joking, but it is one of those things. But the other thing is, these distilleries, your Port Ellens, your Banffs, your Caperdonics, your Broras, they needed independent bottlers.
Yeah.
And it was the independent bottler category that made that. And as people became more educated, like when David and prior to David being at Cadenhead's, there was a shelf in the shops for closed distilleries that would sit there for long enough before people bought them or whatever. Now, if there's a release of a closed distillery, it's sold out, before it's bottled. You just think, "Oh, I'm thinking about bottling something," and it's already an auction. It's just
a thought.
Changed. Yeah. It's
You can
just
auction the
changed
thought
days.
as an NFT.
Oh, don't get me on NFTs. She's down there.
I don't even understand it. So it's all good. But
No,
I think
yeah.
looking back, people would have said those kind of things, but you could push them, and it was always independent bottlings. And I think that's, for me, what drew me to that side of the business is the variety that you can have and the things that you can play with. You know, you can, let's say back in the days when we were starting, it's like, here's some Banff, here's some Brora, here's some Port Ellen. You know, I remember working in the shop in Royal Mile Whiskies, and we had 14 different Port Ellens on the shelf at one time. And like they went from 55 quid to 75 quid a bottle. Wow. And me thinking, 75 quid for a bottle of whiskey? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they closed the distillery. It can't be that good. You know, it's just...
Yeah, but I mean, you were on 2 and 6 an hour then, so...
Well, exactly.
Getting paid in miniatures of bells, decanters.
But right, and so these bottlers were at the time bottling unicorns, bottling legends, and they had no idea that they were bottling unicorns and legends at that time. Do you think we're past the point where unicorns and legends are being bottled, or they can only be realized 20, 25, 30 years after it's been bottled?
Well, it depends if you're talking about rareness or quality. There are still unicorns being bottled, but it's debatable quality, and the rareness is now equated with price. So
yeah,
gone are the days when any closed distillery just about, I mean, any of them just about can be under 100 quid. Any of them. I can't think of one.
No, there simply cannot be.
Yeah.
Right?
It cannot be.
It cannot be.
In the days when, you know, we're looking at 3 to 5 year old world whiskey bottling, single casks selling for 80 to 100 quid, you know, compared to the 20-something Port Ellens and the, you know, Broras and Capradonics of the world.
Mark and I were planning on a world whiskey event for Electric Coup 2. That was our thought. And we started to pick up the phone. Well, I mean, how old is that? We sent messages out to our contacts.
We sent a
For the listeners out there, that was the impression of a rotary phone.
Which I nearly bought one of them today. Which brings it back full circle.
Your office needs one of them, but one of the old pay phones, and it has just the single, you speak into it. Anyway, it was
looking for whiskey,
office.
Stop.
Yes, right.
Send cast samples, stop.
Hello, operator, get me Mr. Whiskey, please. Mr. Whiskey. Yeah, anyway, so Mark and I were going to do a world series. That sounds brilliant for American audience. Nothing to do with baseball. And the prices were prohibitive. We just couldn't do it. By the time we'd got it in and bottled it and added the tiniest of margins, and I'm not even joking there, absolute tiniest, because we did bottle one world whiskey, or outside of Scotland, I should say, in the series. We just couldn't do it. And we were able to bottle a closed distillery of 21 years of age in a 4-square cask at quite a bit less than nearly all of the other 3-4-year-old world whiskies. So, you know, for us it was a no-brainer that we did that. We would still love to do that. I think the series, because we're so tongue-in-cheek, we're not taking anything seriously, and it's purely on what Mark and I like. I think it's a great showcasing for anybody who wants to be involved, and some people are quite happy to be. But everybody now has an idea of what their stuff is worth, and it's It's too high for
It's
Mark
more
and
than
I.
we're willing.
Too high for the dinosaurs.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, put a pin in that thought, because there is a part of the future that I want to circle back to here. But as you bring up electric coup, and we've finished the history portion of the podcast, electric coup, how did it come about? How did you go from being friends to now being co-bottlers, you know, while also being incredibly well known and well regarded in the industry?
Well, I think David and I, you know, as the history section said, known each other since 1998, and we've always thought we should do something together. Like, we had an idea.
We tried for a child.
Book together. Yeah, we tried for a child, but it wasn't working.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
Don't know what we were doing wrong, but works every other time. But
God love you tried. That's what I love. Yeah.
Boy, did we. Sorry, Mark. Sorry. I'm blaming this Welsh whiskey that I've just poured. Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd lots of ideas. At one point, we thought about writing a book, didn't we? The
Speyside Way.
The Speyside.
Yeah.
Speyside Way, where we would just like get drunk in Speyside.
It was a fear and loathing of Speyside, if you can imagine that. Where Mark and I drink our way to oblivion. Yeah. I still think we should do that, but just my capacity is dropped.
Yeah, we might need to take someone to write it. Take the notes. Because I had visions of it as we went to the Highlander Inn, and then there's just a few blank pages, and then it was Tuesday.
And we were in Wales.
Oh, we've done it again, David.
Yeah, when did Rothers get a castle? Oh wait, we're in Edinburgh. Anyway, yes.
So we thought about writing books and stuff, and then we'd always thought we should work together, but annoyingly, or thankfully, I've always been employed by other people, and David's always been employed or had his businesses. So it didn't work. It didn't sync until 2019, and things. What Whiskey was started, and I was independent. David was very independent, and it came about, and we just thought, wouldn't this be fun? And I think it was over a few drinks it kind of came about, and we went for it.
I do think maybe next bottling we should put on it the most independent bottler.
Independent squared.
Yes.
So with your bottlings, right? So finally, David's been independent for a while. He sold Creative Whiskey Company, became his own man to do many other things. You went on, left Cadenhead, started Watt Whiskey with Kate, and so now is the time to do Electric Coup, and then soon Electric Coup. What's it called? Something Boogaloo? 2. Boogaloo.
Electric Coup 2. Electric Coup at the movies.
At the movies. And so, it's clear you guys are having fun, potentially too much fun, or potentially not enough fun. I can't tell which. You know, if you read,
we have legal fun.
You have legal fun, right? So if you look at the tasting notes, you look at the labels. There's all sorts of fun happening, but from a cask selection standpoint, are you looking to bottle now? To be fair, I've only had whiskeys from Electric Coup 1, and I purchased your Macduff and your Croft and Gaia, and there's specific reasons why I purchased those two. But
my choices.
David's choices, that's right.
Are you looking specifically to bottle fun, off the beaten path whiskeys, or just whiskeys that you love, and then you write fun, off the beaten path tasting notes and stories around them? Like, talk to us about how you create the range.
Well, you get into a room and you got loads of bottles, try a shed load of stuff, and you come up with some great ideas, and then you give them to your wives, and they go, "No, you can't do that." Is pretty much how it works.
What we do is we drink as much as we can in a room, and then one of us leaves the room, and then we try to work out who's left. That's pretty much what we do.
Who's left? Someone's missing, and I don't know who it is.
Oh, it's me.
Wait, I'm the one that left. Got it.
Did I leave the room, or am I still in the room? No, Mark and I, we're very lucky in that we have very, very similar tastes when it comes to whiskey. I haven't tried every single whiskey. No, I have, because I was at the show with Kate. I've tried everything they've done. I wasn't working. I was supposed to be. We have very, very similar tastes, and to the point where when Mark was at Duncan Taylor and wherever the hell I was, we were trying to outdo each other with drams. Try that, and we love everything that we. So, it's not as good as this, but it was. So we're very lucky that we don't. I don't think we've ever disagreed on a dram in our life, apart from Edred Hour, but that's a whole other story. So what we're looking for really is a couple drams that we know we could sit and drink in an evening and just chew the cud. No pun intended. And that we want a couple
You should
drams
have intended some pun.
I should have intended that pun. I did.
He did. He's being modest.
Okay.
And we want a couple drams that will challenge as well. So I'm trying to think out of the first series, the Invergordon out of the brandy. That's a bit challenging. A few people didn't get it. A lot of people got it. And then this series, we've got the Manickmore out of the Isla Cask, which
Lovely.
Just Mark and I, as soon as we tasted it, we're like, we're bottling that. And we had another one in an Isla Cask that we were also going to bottle, but Mark's got that for another bottle.
You've also got to look at it as a range.
Yeah.
If you do 6 bottlings in the one David's saying is a Dumbarton. It's a grain that was in an Isla Cask as well, and it's like mezcal, and we both absolutely loved it. And I'm going to bottle it for what whiskey in the future, and it'll probably tank because no one will like it. But I love it. But when we're looking at it, we can't do 2 of them in 6 bottles. We can't have 2 Isla Cask finishes. You've got to, and that would have meant having 2 grains as well. And it's got to be stuff that we like and we put our names to or whatever, etc. But you've got to look at the range. You can't just go for 6 madcaps because even we can't do that. Well, we could, but you've got to.
Well, one of the things that I enjoyed from the first series, specifically about the Crofton Gaia, is that every other Crofton Gaia I'd had up until that point has had this oxtail soup kind of note, right? This super heavy, funky, just meaty as all get out. But this Crofton Gaia was soft and pretty and filled with bready pastries and things like that, and the smoke was gentle, incredibly gentle. And it's one of these ones where you say, okay, if their plan is to bottle off the beaten path wild and wacky whiskeys, well, Crofton Gaia in and of itself is an off the path wild and wacky whiskey, and what you've done is sort of the opposite. You said, here's a very tame version. And I really, really liked that expression of Crofton Gaia. It took me by surprise in the best way.
Well, I think the reason it fit for that range, as Mark was saying, we had 2 Kalilas in that range, which we didn't intend, but we both picked one, so that was that. There were 2 Kalilas. So to have 3 very smoky, funky whiskies, because at least one of the Kalilas, the port one I think I chose, was quite a funky whiskey as well. But
I wanted to hate that, but I loved
it. Sounds like a good title to a song. And of course we are limited to what is available. I think this time round we had 20 samples, 21. No, that's not all the casks that Mark has available. You can't just, right, I'll take 100 samples and sit them, that's 20 whittled down. You guys know. That's whittled down. So, we could have 30 Manickmores or something. But what's the point in that? You can't do a bottling of 6 of Manickmores. Only one guy in Sweden would be happy if he did that. So yeah, you've got to. Oh, he'd be, yeah, that's right. We sold 6 bottles, yay! So yeah, it's difficult range and quirky, but interesting, but affordable, but fun, but people will still drink, so on and so forth. So I would say maybe this is more challenging for Mark, because I don't bottle anything else. Probably more challenging for Mark with his casks to do the coups than it is to do what whiskey.
There's nothing in the coup though that I wouldn't bottle under what whiskey. Obviously it's not like, oh, this is wacky, we'll stick it in there. The Glen Spey we had in the recent what whiskey release, which stinks of balsamic vinegar, is just like, we were going through the samples here at this very table, and that came up and it just hit us, and I was like, I'm having that for what whiskey. You weren't as keen on it, I don't think, as I was, David, and I think we did both like it, but it didn't fit into the range because it was another wacky one. I was like, yeah, we'll have that for that. And so
yeah, it was sherry cask, isn't it? So
yeah. It just reeks of balsamic, and it was.
And who doesn't like a good balsamic?
Well, and that's the thing, like, stinks of balsamic is not a tasting note that you hear very often, but you could see where that would be attractive and a point of difference and a head turner. And the thing
again,
always...
with what whiskey, it was our 5th release, so we can get away with being a little bit more wacky 5th release, because we've sold a few bottles so far, but
no more after the balsamic though.
People. Oh no, the Glen Spey sold out in an instant. It was brilliant. But people know David and I fairly well. Well, the markets we're selling to know us reasonably well, and they know we're going to be daft with our whiskey selections and daft with our labels and daft with everything. But they know they can trust what's in the bottle, because as much as we're idiots, we do take our whiskey fairly seriously. It might be an oddball, but you can see the reason why we've bottled it. It's not being bottled just because it's daft. We've not just went, oh, let's go and find a tomato sauce cask and finish it in that for half an hour. It's done with madness.
David taking notes.
Madness
Just ringing up to see if I can get a tomato sauce cask. Do you know the other funny thing? I was just thinking about this, and it's funny having you here, Jason. Is there are some whiskies too that, in a moment in time, are so scorned upon, so looked down, and then you give it a few years, and it is hot topic stuff. And Lechec Ledègue is probably the very best example of that. When Mark and I were first bottling, about the same time, you Duncan Taylor and I was Cadence, whatever, you couldn't give it away. It was I'll sell you a cask of Ardbeg if you take these 10 Ledègues. It's like, do I have to take 10? Because really nobody's given a toss. And now it's hot property. It's the new Ardbeg. You want a cask of Ledègue, we're going to take these 100 whatever. So some of the things that we're mucking about with at the moment, somebody might say, "Oh, a Manickmore in an Isla cask. That's just too Fruit Loop." Well, you know what? Give it a few years. It might be that people look back on that bottling with a certain, oh wow, yeah, maybe these guys ahead of their time. No. I don't think we can ever recall that. What a luck.
The fact that I started collecting independently bottled Lechig was because nobody wanted it. You could pick it up cheap as chips. And I loved that it was offering a side of the distillery that was not the standard releases, and especially at a time when the cat urine note was on the OB Lechigs. But IBs never showed that. And the very first time we met with you and drank with you, David, when you gifted that 1997 sherry butt 15-year-old Lechig, like, that's a dirty, nasty, down in the mud Lechig. And I couldn't love it more than I do. But, God, it reflected a time when folk were still like, what? No, nope, avoid.
Another example would be Ben Nevis.
Yeah.
Ben
absolutely,
Nevis
Mark.
is just, you know, it's...
Yep.
The only thing that goes up higher in price faster is if Billy Walker buys a distillery. But it's, you know, it's that's a story we need to tell as well, David. But it's there are these things that, and I think Glen Elgin is potential for that in the future. I know you always like Glen Elgin. I think we'll find that we'll tell too many people about it, and then it'll take off, and it'll be too expensive.
I think the one worth whispering is your Manachmore. Your Manachmore that you did for the Watt series was fucking brilliant. And now you've got a Manachmore in Islay.
So we've done a Manachmore in brandy and a Manachmore in Islay. Like, maybe someday I'll bottle a naked Manachmore and just
raw.
Raw Manachmore. Unplugged.
One of the interesting things for me was, you know, sitting here, you know, being one of the four here that gets a cask list, and I think back, David, to the Glentalker's 2008 sherry butts that you bottled that were, you know, dark as night, darker than Loch Dew. Speaking of Manachmore, and now the pricing for 2008 sherry butt Glentalker's from brokers is just ridiculous. Like, no one knows Glentalker's. Why should it be this price? There it is, Jason. I can barely see it. You're in a dark room. All I see is you've presented me a black hole. That's David's bottle.
It's
black.
Sucks all the light.
Right, and so it's like Lechig, where no one gave a shit about it, and all of a sudden it's become a sort of the crown jewels, difficult to get. If you want that, you have to get other stuff. We're seeing the same with Glentalker's as well, and Glentalker's still doesn't have their own official bottling. Like, I don't know the point I'm trying to get at. I guess I'm just exasperated by the idea of it. But where do you think this is coming from? This, like, these stupid ass prices for young sherry cask whiskey. Is it just that it's they know it's going to be dark liquid and
if you make anything dark these days, people go crazy, and the amount of well, this is the thing. People are seeing Glentalker's sherry butts, I've seen Craigellachie sherry butts on price lists.
Yeah.
For 40, 50, 60,000 pounds, and you're like, and then, you know, for a laugh, you ask for a sample, and it's you know, pale as
piss.
Yeah. Holding up a thing for a podcast. That's freaking professional. How many times have you done this, Mark? You know, but it's you put sherry butt on a lot of brokers' lists. Sherry butt just. You add a digit almost. It's ridiculous, and there's people going for it because there's been these 8-year-old Glentalkers and dark sherry that have been great. And remember the old like Adelphi did loads of the Glenrothes 6-year-olds and stuff.
Yeah.
People think, oh, here's a 6-year-old Glentalkers in a sherry butt. It's going to be like that, and they buy it blind and then go,
So are you saying we only have David Stirk to blame for these crazy cask prices?
We have David Stirk to blame for a lot of things, but not cask prices, I would say. Just people have went nuts because the flipping market, or the not flipping with casks, but people seeing, you know,
cask investment.
Again, blame Billy Walker. You know, they see, dark Glenallachie, dark Glendronach, you know, the price rises. And so people think, sherry casks. And there's all these people trying to invest in whiskey. So they want a sherry butt because that's going to go up in price. And then they get the sample of the cask that they've bought, and, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's it's just been re-racked 3 days ago.
So you're actually bringing me around to the future portion of this, and Joshua's the optimist in this family, and I'm the pessimist. But I'm kind of curious here. You talk about coming into whiskey at a time when it was quite serious and it was quite twee, and you work diligently along with other people to try and relax it. Clearly, you've got Electric Coup series, which is having a laugh and playing around with the seriousness and the preposterous nature of some tasting notes. Do you worry that the industry is becoming too serious again? We're seeing the luxury car partnerships, and we're seeing the bespoke shoe partnership and the bespoke watches partnerships. Is the industry trending in that direction, do you think, or is it just a segment? And if some of us keep having fun, we might be able to hold on to this a little bit longer.
It's
both silent.
It has caught the eye of the investor, and it has done it in the last 3 to 5 years in such a, as Mark was saying before, with these prices and you only have to go back 5 years and there were 4 places to auction a bottle, and really there were only 2. Kind of McTeers and Sotheby's, that kind of thing. There was Bonhams as well, and then all of a sudden, I don't know how many of the places there are now to auction bottles. There are some places that are continuous, non-stop auctioning bottles, and of course, with limited nature of things, certain things go up in value, and that attracts people. I can make an immediate return, and the returns don't have to be big for it to suddenly attract more people and more people. And now you've got people realizing, well, if I can make that on a bottle, what can I make on a cask? And that attracted a whole another legion of people, and now you've got cask auction sites, and some of those are nearly continuous as well. So we have speculation, and we have people with money, and I'm sure Mark will back me up on this.
I don't have money.
I get back up that David has money.
Yeah. I get asked all the time. Oh, so somebody said I should get into whiskey as an investment. And I just, it's always that statement, I should get into whiskey. And I think, what do you mean? Put your swimming trunks and dive into it? What do you mean, get into whiskey? And my advice to them is always the same. Go out and make friends with your local retailer. And when you get stuff in that's limited, buy it and keep it on your shelf. And maybe drink some of it, Don't go looking for casks of whiskey, because I'm not going to sit and tell you how to do that. Because the more people like you who join in, the less us 4 guys get to bottle affordable whiskey and drink whiskey and go to festivals and pour whiskey and have these tastings and do this stuff. Now, people might be listening to this and say, well, it's all well and good. You sold out. You're part of the problem. Yes, and I can't really argue with that. Yes, I did sell out, but you show me one cask on the market that came from me, you can't. So I sold out in a way that kept that. this is audio only, right? No,
yeah.
No, that didn't come from that. But I saw the writing on the wall. That was part of the reason why I sold out. I was literally looking. Those Glentockers are a good example. I was buying them for whatever, selling them to the US, and knowing on every single cask I was losing money, because to replace it was going to cost me double. And
I think
to live like that was tough.
Yeah, and you guys all know this as well. But one of the big problems, and Josh and Jason, you've been bottling for much longer than I have, which is annoying. But you guys are old hats compared with me and David, that are new bottlers now. But it's
this is the sound of me shaking my head. No,
yeah, exactly.
But you look at the market today, and I'm lucky David's been in the industry longer than I have, and we're fairly close. We're closer to the source of the casks than a lot of people coming in. And I'm a geek, and every time I get offered a cask, I log it in a spreadsheet. The cask, the details, blah, 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 the price, the date, and everything. And you get people now that are pretending to be whiskey barons, that they have, well, look at me, I have 1,000 casks, look at my list. And you go, well, I've been offered that same cask by 5 different people this week at 5 different prices. Mm-hmm. And it annoys me because a lot of the time, well, the prices are too high, and there are people who are taking the piss with their margins, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also the people that know me, that are sending me lists, that know that I know that is on someone else's list, and they're not even bothering to take it off. Some of them don't even bother changing the format they just copy and paste it.
Yes.
And you're like, well, that's the same. I can actually almost go into the spreadsheet and work out the percentage you've added on.
Oh, 100%, I've done it, yep.
From the cell.
Yep.
And that, I think, has changed it, because a lot of these people that are wanting to invest in whiskey now, they don't have access to I'm not buying much direct. I think we've bought 3 casks direct from distilleries, maybe 4. Which that's a percentage of what we've done. It's probably pretty high, but because we've done hee-haw. But a lot of other people that have not been in the industry for 20 years, 10 years, whatever, don't have access to this. So they're buying from maybe the 3rd, 4th, 5th person.
Yeah, sure.
And people are seeing these casks selling. And I see these casks selling to people who should know better. And you think, that's what's ruining it for us, that a dark sherry Glentockers is more than you want to pay.
But is it, when you say people are buying it, and therefore, almost by someone purchasing that, they're almost, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Why can't I think of words today?
They're setting the benchmark.
Yeah, almost proving the point that cask is actually worth that, when we know, in fact, that is not what the cask is actually worth.
Yeah. But you've got to look at your customer. Yeah. And different people are bottling for different customers. Some people are bottling for high-end, don't care, they want a fancy wooden box and they want a crystal decanter. And to be honest, whatever's inside the bottle is fairly irrelevant. We're at that price point, etc., etc. I think we're bottling for people to drink.
Yeah.
And I always look at it, and I'm sure David's the same, I'm sure you guys are the same. I look at it and go, would I pay that for it? And I'm from the northeast of Scotland, so, I'm like almost as tight as David. And we're looking at a segment of the market that want to drink and want to, it's a luxury product at the end of the day, whatever it is that we're bottling.
Yeah, true.
But it's, I want to feel that I can afford to open the bottlings that we bottle, instead of going, this is worth £700. I could pay my mortgage this month, or I could drink this bottle of whiskey. Should I sell it? So, but there's other people that 700 quid. Yeah, I mean, I got offered a cask of Macallan today that would have worked out cost price £5,000 a bottle. Before you even put glass or bottling. To be honest, at that age, still the price of a bottle is irrelevant when you're spending £5,000 on the liquid. But but that'll probably sell.
Yeah, but who doesn't love a 6-year-old Macallan?
Yeah, but that's not the market that we're selling to. So but unfortunately, the people that are selling to that market are knocking down and affecting our market.
So, are the prices? And I think I know the answer to this, but at the same time, I think there are multiple answers to this question. Do you think the overall cost of casks that's really and traditionally meant to be within industry, right? From brokers to bottlers. Do you think that has gone up those costs have predominantly gone up because of cask investment, because of cask auctioning? Or do you think that part of it, too, is some bottlers, and I'm not going to mention any names here, will see a cask like that and say, you know what? I've got a client that will purchase that. And you know what? I will pay that because they will pay that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that is a huge part of it. And you have with that as well the new bottler, and I'm talking about really the last 2 to 3, 4 years, that can look at a cask of whiskey and say there's 300 bottles in that, and I can sell it direct to the consumer at X amount and make £5-10 a bottle, whatever, and I can make $3,000 just like that in an instant. And whereas Mark and I have always been, we need retailers first and foremost. Retailers, bars, restaurants. They are the lifeblood of the industry. That's how we got started, both in work and in passion. If it wasn't for bars and retailers, that's how we met. God, we might not have met, Mark.
I know.
So
if people were selling their whiskey direct, we might not have met.
Yeah, and it's now got to the point where you have clubs, and Mark and I are members of these clubs on Facebook and otherwise, where the price is such that people will buy a bottle and disperse samples because of the cost of these bottles, and they are being sold direct to the clubs by these bottlers who have no interest in distributors, no interest in retailers. So if a cask of whiskey is £10,000, Mark and I will sit down and we'll say, right, that's £10,000. We've got a bottling cost, we've got a labelling cost, we've got a tax cost, we've got a profit cost, we've got a distribution cost, an importer cost, and a retailer cost, and then their tax cost. And we have to factor all of those things in. The same bottler can look at that and go, I can sell that off my website with one, I've got a bottler, I've got a label, I've got a tax, and my profit, and that's it. Cutting out all of those other costs. So suddenly, something that's stupidly priced to us is reasonably priced to them. And the amount of times I've heard brokers say to me, I've got so-and-so available, do you want some? And I'll say, yeah. And they say, well, I've just sold it for this. And I know exactly where it's gone because I can work the margins. I'm not stupid. I've seen it on the market. And those same people, when I challenge, they call me dinosaurs. They say, you don't understand the way the market's going, man. Get with the times, man. All this kind of crap. And it does my head in. It does my head in because the last 20 years, Mark and I have been traveling around the world, visiting bars, hotels, retailers. They're the people we love. They're the real brand ambassadors. I'm on my soapbox now. I don't know if you've noticed this.
Stay up there. I love it.
People.
I love it.
He's warming up.
But it does my head in. It absolutely does my head in. And when I say to them, you're the reason cask prices have gone up. You're the major reason. Not investors. You're the major reason. Because the investment cask don't get to consumers. They don't get it. It's the other stuff that gets there. And they to be called a dinosaur with that. Well, okay, if you want to see all the retailers, distributors, and bars and restaurants not have whiskey anymore, or even worse, the bars now have to buy it direct off you rather than going to the local shop and supporting them. So.
And I think there's also it's when we set up whiskey, we were like, we don't want to sell direct for that exact reason, and the fact that we would have to work, and that would be a pain, but. It's one thing selling, a Highland Park or an Imperial or whatever direct. A Manic Moor 2008 ex Isla cask. Well, it turns out it sold pretty well, but it's not something that you're going to You sit, and I see a lot of these people doing these bottlings, and it's all just big names, or like easy sells, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what David and I and what you guys are doing, you're building a brand where you're letting people try Craigellachie's, Balmenich's, Benrinnes, etc., that are not necessarily the easiest sells, and that's why you need to reward your importers and your retailers with the Imperials and the Highland Parks and the whatever else we might get. I mean, and I think people forget that. When I started in the industry, I was on the shop floor, and it's the person on the shop floor that is the most important person to your business. Like, I've taken Royal Mile Whiskies, for example. It's owned by Keir Short, great guy, Dundee United fan, but we'll let him off. He's built a brilliant business there, and he's great. But when was the last time he was on the shop floor hand selling a bottle of whiskey? Our stuff a lot of the time needs hand selling.
Yeah.
And that's why you need. And I think David and I, you guys have said, we build relationships with these people. We know bartenders around the world. We know shopkeepers. We know the people on the shop floor because they come to us, they speak to us, and I think that's what differentiates some bottlers from the guys that kind of David was speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. I didn't think when I woke up this morning I'd be hearing an impassioned defense of the American three-tier system.
God damn it, Jason! Nice. That was my point. Son of a bitch. All right. Yeah.
And so the fact that over here, when we started with the Nation and we were online, we still must go through the importer, the distributor, and the retailer for that direct service to a consumer.
Even in your three-tier market, there are those companies that fudge the system.
Oh, there's pass-throughs, right? There's the importer that can make a small margin, distributor that can make a small margin.
And the big boys that can, they are all things to all people pretty much until it hits Costco's floor, So that, if you want to fudge the system, you can fudge the system. It's the people who, I would never have got into America and broken America, which is something I always wanted to do if I'd not met Sam. And if I'd ever begrudged the margin that Sam, sorry, we're talking about Impex beverages. If I'd begrudged the margin that Sam made and just thought, do you know what, I can do the same model as a certain retailer in California, I could have done that. I could have just, messed up all of the work and the passion, the commitment that Sam and his team put in. It's the same idea, and certainly I've seen it a lot in Europe. And it's funny, I've got this story of Little Mill. I remember when I had a bunch of, 91 Little Mills, and I remember offering one to a customer in Europe, and their response was, "Oh, is this going through your importer?" I said, "Yeah." Everything goes, "Oh, no, we want it direct because we don't want to pay their margin. It's too expensive otherwise." And within 12 months, that Little Mill was worth 50% more than what it was. And I just thought, you know what, to cut off a tiny bit, to begrudge a company that works really hard and does a lot of work, and goes to the shows and protects my brand and looks after me. It's that mentality that I don't like. There's one very famous bottler near me that never goes to a show at all. There's a whiskey bottler, never goes to a show, has no representation of their brand, has no importers, no retailers, sells a huge amount direct. You'll see it on the websites, you'll see it on Facebook, social media, whatever. And people go on about how much of a bargain this is. And I'm thinking, but when you go into town and you go to your local retailer, when you go to the festival and you drink those bottles, all you're really doing is sticking your fingers up to these people and saying, if you could just cut out all of this stuff and sell it to me direct, again, I'm on the soapbox. I'm very sorry.
No, but I couldn't agree more with you, David. And we get into arguments with people all the time about this kind of thing. And I've also been called a dinosaur or whatever. But for me, the booze industry is about relationships. You know, it's who you have relationships with. It's, you know, like, you look at what whiskey. We are in Belgium, Denmark, Taiwan, Japan, and the UK. We could be in more if we had more stock, but I don't really want to. Maybe one day we'll go to America or whatever. But
that's me winking at you.
Yeah, you know. Well, I'll be seeing you in a few hours for another tasting probably. It's one of these things that, Japan. I've spent a lot of time there, going around the bars and building those relationships, and that's what has helped Walt Whiskey. That when we started on our own, the fact that I went around all these bars in Japan for years and spent Cadenhead's and Duncan Taylor's money in the bars, so they're now re-spending it on me. And Kate's built up relationships with the Kinder or whatever. That means much more than a quick buck.
Yeah.
You're helping that bar survive. Because they're helping you survive, and it's it keeps coming full circle. But when you can say, I've been going to the mash tun in Tokyo for the last 15 years, or it's been a while now, but Delilah's, being in there or whatever, and you build up relations. The Highlander Inn, that's you at the Highlander Inn, etc. It's, for me, that makes it much more satisfying, having people that know you and people that allegedly like you handling your stuff and buying your stuff, but buying your stuff because they trust you, not because, we're doing you a favour. It's hopefully that's why they're doing it.
So, go ahead, Jason.
Before you circle into what I think is the final question, I have to go. Kai has a band concert tonight, guitar, you chaps will appreciate that, and clarinet. But I got to get
him... Same time.
Is this how you play the clarinet?
Yeah, multi-talented. I think you're thinking of the
I want to see him
flute.
play the guitar and clarinet at the same time.
That's the trouser flute.
So I got to go feed him, and we got to take care of a tuxedo, and then I got to get him over to the school. So I'm going to leave you to wrap up the final question. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Brilliant getting to just sit and dram with you, to be honest. But
it's nice to see you, Santa Claus. Nice to see you.
Cheers. Yeah, I'm busy on the 24th. Just don't ask me to do anything on that date. So.
Well, I don't believe in you, so fuck you.
I'm about to disappear.
But I can see him.
Excellent. Be well, chaps. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Cheers, Joshy.
Cheers. So, actually, what I was about to say is I can hear dinner being prepared downstairs, which means my house is only going to get louder, which means it's probably a good time to ask the final question. There's been Electric Coup 1, Electric Coup 2. Whether it's Electric Coup 3 or some of your other projects, whether it's What Whiskey or David, I know now you're with North Star Spirits. What has you excited for 2022? What can we look forward to?
Well, do you know what? Before I came out tonight, I was having dinner. So that's a lie, because I didn't. But the kids were having dinner with Kate, because I had a big lunch. That's beside the point. And we were talking about the Electric Coup. I was like, Zach, my nearly 7-year-old son, I was like, going to do a thing tonight for an Electric Coup. He's like, I've got an idea. Your next release, you could do Electric Coup at the circus, and you could have them all like old circus posters, trapeze.
Barnum.
And,
P something Barnum. Oh, I love it. Brilliant.
P.T. Barnum. Yeah.
P.T. Barnum, that's it.
So it's great that my 7-year-old is excited about Electric Coup as much as we are. It's, hopefully we'll do some more.
Can we get the guest taste on the back? Zachary's notes. Would that contravene certain laws? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. Do you know what? Zach technically picked our crowdfunder bottle.
Really?
We had 2 casks that we were deciding between, And, we've bottled them both since, but the first Kate and I was like, and we went, Zach, I mean, we only let him smell it, but it's like, Zach, smell these two. Which one would you pick? And he went, that one. So he technically picked the 16-year-old Orkney as our crowdfunder bottling.
Oh, so, I love that.
Yeah. But, so hopefully we'll do some more electric coup. We've lots of things to come out. And more what whiskey. We're looking to do 4 releases hopefully this year. But we've got another one booked for bottling at the end of January. The labels are arriving on Monday, so that we're ahead of schedule by quite a bit.
Okay. And any one bottling out of the range you're most excited about?
The upcoming what whiskey or the?
Yeah, the upcoming what whiskey.
We've got a milk and honey coming.
Oh, nice.
Which
I've tried that too. Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Have
you ever heard of milk and honey, Joshua? You know this, guys?
Yeah. Milk and honey sounds familiar. Sounds kind of Jewy. I don't know. It's tough to say.
I mean,
I'm waiting for the manna bottling. Why haven't they done a manna? There must be a manna bottling coming out at some point. And it needs to sort of, you buy it and it comes out like that, floats down,
yeah, it's
from
Cask
the sky.
manna, which is wonderful.
Or the bottling that's just got a gap in the middle and the label's just a guy, Yeah, okay. Sorry, these are all sort of biblical jokes. But,
it's all good though.
Yeah, no, that milk and honey's a filter.
Yeah, because, again, buying from Milk and Honey, a bit like when we bought the Paul John from Shelton, we're dealing direct with distilleries, which is not something we get to do that often. I know you guys do it more, particularly in America, than we do. But I just always remember I was lucky to get to go to Israel and went around Milk and Honey, and it was the best distillery tour ever.
Right. Yeah.
I walked in and Tomer handed me a pint. I was like, sweet. He's like, you'll need this. We're going for a distillery tour. It's like, happy days. And I think we had a few and then cracked open some cask samples. And I think that was one that blew me away. And it's young, but it should be young because of the temperature, etc., etc. But it doesn't taste forced. There's a lot of stuff these days that's hitting the market that's been put into overly active casks to be sold at 2.5 minutes past its 3rd birthday. And it's nice and it's interesting. But there's a lot of new stuff, new distilleries that I'm quite excited about, that it's going to be interesting to see where this is nothing to do with what whiskey. We're not actually going to bottle any of these new things. But, Ardnamurchan is doing great stuff. Mm-hmm. The one that caught me was Lindor's. I was really impressed with that. I tasted it. And I think it was because I was at a tasting in Dufton. And again, all roads lead back to Whisky Festival in Dufton. And we tried the Ardnamurchan and it was really good. But I wasn't surprised because I expected it to be really good because everything those guys do is brilliant. And Lindor's had kind of not been on my radar that much, if that makes sense. And when I tried it, I was like, darn it, this is... So it was the kind of revelation, if that makes sense. I probably think the Ardnamurchan's better, but it was just that I wasn't expecting as much from the Lindor. So it's all about managing expectations about a lot of things, I think.
Gotcha.
That's why I set the bar low when I'm trying to, for most things.
Yeah, go in with low expectations and be pleasantly surprised. How about you, David?
What was the question?
Sorry, what has you excited in 2022 and beyond? Whether it's North Star or Electric Coup or some other projects you've got going on.
Well, yeah, I think Mark and I maybe do one of these a year until we get bored of it. So, and we should be meeting up in May for your day. Is it May, Mark?
Yes, May. The May Day.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to hopefully just traveling. Everything was knocked on the head this year, which sucked. I'm looking forward to being a bigger part of North Spirits. Ian's got some fantastic ideas. But yeah, say Mark and I will probably we'll do one coup a year unless it
unless we get bored or there's demand. We are thinking of doing a Japanese exclusive, so there might be a few casks going to the land of the rising sun. We have to talk.
We also need to figure out a way of getting Croucher involved and maybe some other people, so it can be like, crouching coup, hidden something else.
Yeah, I think Croucher Tiger Hidden Coup is probably. I think that.
I do know a guy in China that's called Tiger, so we could get him involved. But
I think Mr. Woods in America might have a problem with that. But do one with a smashed up leg. Cow with a smashed up leg. Anyway, too soon. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm involved in the whole. As you know, I'm involved with a whole load of stuff, and I'm very much hoping that the world can get back to some sort of normality next year, and just as Mark said, just to see people. I miss you guys. I miss how casual everything was and how easy everything was, and just going for a drink and stuff like that. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, gents, it has been a wonderful catch up. Thank you both again so much. Your friendship means the world, and the conversation is always great.
Likewise, sir. Likewise.
Lovely seeing you, my friend.
Always a ton of fun getting to hang out with Mark and David. And, oh gosh, I know we've said it a gamillion times, but not seeing them in person, not drinking with them in person, not getting to see their respective other halves. Don and Kate, who are also wonderful, wonderful human beings. As we said before we went into the interview, it's COVID times. Mm-hmm. Nothing's perfect, and not dramming with good friends is far from perfect. But getting to hang out with them for a little bit in December was a ton of fun.
That was okay. And if we play our cards right, maybe we'll get to see them this year. I'm really hoping on that.
I like your use of maybe.
Potentially. Oh, that was last episode. That was last extra.
Yeah, I was going to say the word potentially doesn't have a month hidden in it though. Maybe.
Oh, I see what you did there. Oh.
Only I saw what you did there. So, so now you've seen me seeing you see what you did there.
I don't have any witty. Yes, I saw everything.
Wow. I'm currently reading a book on quantum mechanics, and so you seeing me seeing what you've done there sounds very quantum.
Ooh, what book is it you're reading?
I'll have more in a future episode for you. I wanted to circle back
wait. What if we started a book club, Jason? Let's start a book club.
Fuck off.
No. I want to read about. I was in the bookstore just the other day, and
I would be happy for you and I to start a book club that you and I are members of, and that's the extent of it.
Well, what I was going to say is I was in the bookstore the other day in the science section, and quantum always excites me. So maybe later, at the later date, you could tell me about this book. Can't believe you're keeping it from me and our listeners, but. I've learned to live with it.
I'm only halfway through it at the moment, and so I can't say more on it, because maybe it falls off a cliff and becomes the worst thing I've ever read. So far, that's not going to happen. But you never know.
On a quantum level, if you're halfway there, that means the other half has already been done somewhere else.
Well, and I'm in big trouble. If Zeno's paradox is true, I will never actually complete this book. So,
what if it's the xenomorph paradox?
What if it's the Matrix? I don't know. We're just throwing words at each other
sorry.
now. I was going to circle back for curious listeners when I delivered a couple of Kilholmans into my earlier spiel. And so one of them was the 8-year-old Madeira finish selected by Gene Charnas at Warehouse Liquors in Chicago.
Yes, that was last year's, my favorite Kilhoman of last year. There you go.
Yeah, and any time I need to pull a Kilhoman off the shelf that will just do what I need it to do of an evening, that's an automatic for me. I think I've said this to you previously, but oftentimes as I transition from the end of the workday into dinner making time, I will pour a cheeky wee fino. And you can imagine at Shabbat, I am most definitely going to pour a fino when I'm making dinner.
Fino sherry.
A fino sherry. But what then happens for me is I've got the glass that's held my fino. It's a sherry copita that I absolutely love. I've had it for easily 2 decades at this point. Really wonderful glass. But it's now got notes of fino in it by the time I've finished that sherry. So what I do is I pull the Kilchoman Fino Matured from 2020. I pull that bottling from my shelf, and that's what goes into my sherry, my ex-sherry glass. I enjoy that, and now I've transitioned into the Kilchoman world. And so I then pour the Kilchoman Madeira, in this case, the Jean Charnas edition, into my glass. And I'm living in a Kilchoman world. It's a fun little pattern and one that I've quite happily fallen into.
One thing I find myself, well, I shouldn't say I find myself doing this. I haven't done this in a while, but this is something I used to do quite a bit. Is if I were drinking an Oloroso of an evening or some Fino or what have you, insert sherry wine here, and I were interested in transitioning to whiskey, sometimes I would pour just a straight up ex-bourbon cask whiskey, first fill, second fill, whatever the case may be, and sometimes just add a dash or two, could be a drop, it could be 3 drops, it could be a dash of that sherry that I was drinking into the whiskey. So you have this non-sherry matured whiskey with a dash of sherry in there. Now, granted, what I've done is I've made a cocktail. It really is no longer whiskey at that point. But that was, for me, a really fun way of exploring the flavors if I didn't have that particular cask type around, from that distillery or this distillery. And that was always fun for me to do. I just haven't done that in a while.
Just as you mentioned cocktails a second ago, I mentioned the Toronto in our last episode.
Yes.
And there have been responses. And Seabass, Chris Sebastian, he sent me the makeup that he'd worked on. He'd made a Toronto. Local friends. I was drinking Torontos with them. They were digging on them. And then James Foster, who we're saving a few James Foster emails for the mailbag episode, but James Foster sent in a very cool, I think it's 5 words. Try the Toronto with GOT Lagavulin. Game of Thrones Lagavulin.
Oh, that's interesting. And I have 2 bottles of that. That's the one Game of Thrones thing I actually bought. What does he say happens?
That was, as the kids say, that was the email.
Interesting. So,
but it's interesting, right? Because we talked about using Old Forester rye in it to then have Lagavulin. That's a big change.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, both are sweet whiskeys, just sweet for different reasons. Obviously, the Lagavulin has the smoke, and the Old Forester has a bit of spice. That's interesting. So I would think that you mix the Fernet with the Lagavulin, so now you've got herbaceousness mixing in with the sweet and the smoke, and then the maple syrup just adding in a bit more sweet and some of that texture. Yeah, I mean, it's all a balancing act, right? I think that should be the name of that cocktail.
Face as you're describing that.
Well, it's because I'm thinking about how all of the flavors are going to balance each other out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I like that, right? It almost sounds as if, what's that drink? I think it's called The Last Word, where it's mezcal and gin and lime juice and like the kitchen sink. It's just everything, and it shouldn't work. Mm-hmm. But it ends up being a phenomenal drink because everything is so perfectly balanced. And that's what his version of your Toronto sounds like.
Well, and that's what I've enjoyed with the feedback around the Toronto is just the number of people saying that quarter ounce of maple syrup brings so much to the party. It's a really wonderful component. So that's been very cool. I'm glad the Toronto has resonated with people who have thrown themselves in there. Somebody tagged me on the Instagrams where Sagamore, what's the rest of their name? Sagamore Spirit, Sagamore. It was their rye anyway. They did a posting of something that looked exactly like a Toronto. There was maybe an additional ingredient in there, maybe some bitters actually, and somebody had tagged me and said, this sounds like, Johnston Yellen's Toronto from the last episode of One Nation Under Whiskey. So, and again, like, Toronto's not mine. I don't even know if Toronto's the most commonly used name for that cocktail, but that's my experience as this observer has been sharing it.
Should we each come to next episode with our own cocktails? Yours could be the Bridgewater. Mine could be the Guilford.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. I tried to bring book club to you. No. I tried to bring cocktail club to you.
Next Fight Club. Can't talk about that. First rule of Cocktail Club: we don't post it on the podcast.
Yeah.
No, I'm just I've got my Gringroni up my sleeve, right? I'm so proud of my Gringroni, and every time I present that, you always say, but it doesn't sound anything like a Negroni. But it's delicious. I like it a lot, and I love the name of it. That mole from Basic City, the Mexican mole stout that I mentioned earlier in this podcast, is called Gringo. so
my question,
I thought of my Gringroni as soon as I saw that.
My question to you is, was that made with mole sauce? Because mole sauce is not vegetarian. It's usually made with beef stock.
No, there's no mole sauce in it. I think they probably just use some of the mole spicing, or as you see a lot of the mole chocolate. I think it's just really a shortcut for a spicier chocolate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like the stone one, what's it? It's not Exolote, but Exocoveza.
Xenomorph.
That's the one.
Xenomorph, I think it's called.
Yeah. That Exocoveza is using that kind of mole chocolate approach, and is also absolutely delicious. But anyway, before we kind of ramble too far here, thanks to David and Mark for their time and their camaraderie. That's the word I'm struggling for. I was going to say there is no news segment today. However, we are working on a new company website. Mm-hmm. And that will be ripe for release sometime in the very near future. If you are a Single Cask Nation online member here in the United States, the buying page is not going to change. So don't worry. But we are very excited to have a much more in-depth, detailed, present company presence on the interwebs.
Correct. Yeah, just to be clear, singlecasknation.com will remain singlecasknation.com. The website, Jason, that you're referring to is specific to J&J Spirits, of which Single Cask Nation is just one leg in the stool. We've got other brands we're going to be launching. Obviously, One Nation Under Whiskey is sort of its own little brand in and of itself, right? But we have other alcohol brands we're going to be launching and other things we're going to be doing, and that will be the repository. Is that what we call it? Is that what the kids call it?
It's always such a dangerous word because it sounds exactly like the type of medicine that you stick up your arse.
You're supposed to. That's why they call it a suppository. You're supposed to.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Gosh, it's so funny talking about, my uncles getting together drinking. That was always a joke.
You had to give them the suppository as well, not just a drink, but just...
I always remember my Uncle Gilbert saying, I went to the doctor and he gave me some pills, called them suppositories. I don't know what that means, but for all the good they did, I should have stuck them up my arse. I also remember Uncle Gilbert telling that joke regularly. That was the thing about jokes. You could just repeat all the good ones, right? You just circled back to the good ones for any particular event. So, but yes, a repository for the brand is not the way we're ever gonna say it. But yes, you are correct in your meaning there. And then we're not going to do an email because obviously we're building towards the mailbag episode, which will be the very next episode.
And the final of season 5. I mean, season 5 is about to close, Jason.
That's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. As much as we're not having an email today, we did get to throw in correspondence from James Foster and Seabass.
Correct.
So there's that.
Because our last episode will be the annual mailbag episode, that's really the reason why we're not bringing any emails in on this episode. But because of that, I wanted to remind people you have until January 30th, 2022, to get your question in for the mailbag episode. We've already received a number of emails.
We have indeed.
Right? We can't list them all. We can't answer them all in the episode. But that doesn't mean don't send them in, because you may have a killer question that we just say, you know what? We got to answer that. So please do. You can email us questions at OneNationUnderWhiskey, info@singlecastnation.com if that's preferred. You can always send us a message through Instagram, at OneNationUnderWhiskey. You can send us a message through Facebook as well. If you're on Twitter, you could do it there, at OneNationWhiskey. Send us the DM. Fill our DMs, as the kids say. Do the kids say that?
I think the kids say slide into my DMs.
Slide into my DMs. That sounds naughty. That sounds real naughty,
It's very
Jason.
naughty. It's very naughty. You, if you think that's naughty, get this, Joshua. Netflix and chill, which the kids say.
Yeah.
Also naughty.
Netflix
naughty.
and chill is naughty? I thought...
Yeah, I always thought it was watch a movie and eat some ice cream.
Yeah.
Nope. No, it's naughty.
Does that have something to do with, like, penises and stuff?
Always the penis of you.
I am both excited for our mailbag episode, as well as the start of our season 6, which we've just secured an interview that is going to be absolutely epic. No news here, just a tease. There's going to be an epic season 6 opener, so really excited about that. Is there anything else you wanted to say in closing, Jason?
I'm just really happy that we get to do this. What's happening here? What was that?
I'm
sentence?
sorry. Wait. What is? Sorry. Let me stop what I'm doing. That we get to do what?
Yes, the podcast.
Oh, the
People listen to
podcast.
this. You and I talk to each other. People listen to it. Thanks for that.
So does not excite you. Doesn't bring
What
you
an
joy.
what an interesting place to take that.
Let's see how much of that I use.
Do you have suppositories on the brain now?
I do.
Is that what we've done
You
here?
mentioned suppositories, and I just want.
Man,
I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
I can utter something I've never uttered in my life. These are a collection of words that I have never said up to this point. All with you.
On Jason.
I'm going to very awkwardly walk out of here now.
More like uncomfortably. On that note, I'm going to raise my glass to you, to both Mark and David, and of course to our listeners. I understand we are not at the end of the 5th season, but it feels awfully damn close because it is. And not a day goes by where I'm not thankful for each and every one of our listeners. So I raise my glass to them, to you, to Mark, to David.
And to all, a good day. I said, good day.
I said good day, sir. You stole fizzy lifting drinks. You...
What are you saying?
That's what you say when you say, I say good day, sir. That's when Willy Wonka says, you stole fizzy lifting drinks. We had to clean the thing because of you, blah, blah, blah. And then you're supposed to give me the everlasting gobstopper, and then everything's okay. And I said, you've won. You've won, dear boy. You've won. And then I take you on the Wonkavator, and we go sideways and front ways, and you get a chocolate factory in the end.